Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Viva Broadcasts. In this episode, director Buddy Deshler welcomes Dr. Kenneth Johnson, principal trombone of Sinfonia Gulf Coast, as well as trombone faculty at the Fredericksburg Brass and Tidewater Brass Institutes. They discuss establishing effective practice methods that achieve goals throughout your career and life as a musician. Hope you enjoy!
So if you can't tell, we're really excited about how much fun we're going to have today on the 4th episode of the Viva Broadcasts with Dr. newly minted, fresh from the cleaners, Dr. Kenneth Johnson, talking about practice methods. How does it feel to be a doctor, Kenneth?
It feels great. I feel like I have a little bit more authority on everything I say. It felt weird. At first, I felt like I needed to read a lot more, but that quickly wore away. So that's fine. I'm back to normal.
Back to your coloring books?
Yeah, back to my coloring books, just a normal day. Got some reds and blues and greens. Nothing too crazy.
Was that your graduation present was a box of crayons for your coloring books?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, it was.
So my package came in the mail. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. So in today's episode on practice methods, Kenneth is one of the most hardworking friends that I have, as well as teachers. So not only has he improved himself as a musician to be principal trombone and principal bass trombone of multiple orchestras, but how he's been using that in his teaching at Florida State, as well as at both Fredericksburg Brass Institute and Tidewater Brass Institute. So certainly a man with methods behind his practicing. So without further ado, I'm going to take it over to Kenneth.
Thanks, buddy. We're just kind of going over some basics. This is a crazy time right now. It's pretty unprecedented, and I think we're seeing a lot of people just, we're having a tough time where we have all this time, and so we feel like we should be doing all this, accomplishing all this stuff, but it's really tough. Our brains aren't really even designed to process this what's happening next week thing we're going through. And so I just kind of want to give a broad range of some of my favorite practice methods. I think I'm not on Facebook, but I'm sure if anybody has a comment on Facebook, a question, they can get it to me. I'm just going to go over some of the basics that I do, because if it was hard to practice, really, I wouldn't be able to do it. So we take the whole goal of what we're going to talk about today is taking things that are hard, making them easy, and then just kind of plugging them back in. So getting started, like I said, with this time is crazy, but any time is a good time to reevaluate the way we practice. And right now it seems like we have unlimited time, but like I said, that seems great, but it can also be bad. I remember when this first started, I was like, oh, I'm going to practice and it'll be great. And it can be kind of tough. And it reminded me of when you go to a Mexican restaurant, you get the all you can eat chips, and it's this unlimited thing seems great, but suddenly it's your actual meal comes and then suddenly it's like, oh, I'll just eat this tomorrow because I'm full now because I've spent my currency on these chips. And that's kind of what we do. It's like we spend our time currency on other stuff because we have all day, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow, and then suddenly these days blend together. And I'm like I said, it's really it's a lot easier, I think, to warm up at 8 a.m. when you have a 9 a.m. rehearsal than it is to warm up at 8 a.m. when you have a rehearsal sometimes in the next spring, maybe. And so to kind of get through this, we have to make the most of our time with efficient practice. And I don't want to talk too much about goal setting because there's so many great resources out there. There's the Bulletproof Musician is one of my favorites. They talk about goal setting. They talk about a lot of these ideas come from Bulletproof Musician. Some of them come from Inner Game of Tennis. Some come from or they all kind of come together. And what I'm saying, I won't be saying things specific to Inner Game of Tennis, but there's a lot of different resources out there to find. But I want to talk about goal setting a little bit, and I think it's important to start with our big goals and use those to inform our smaller goals. Um, thinking about it like a career goal affecting our long term, to our year goals, to our month goals, week goals, to our day goals, and then just our practice session goals. By having an idea of what we want long term, it becomes a lot easier to plan for the now. And now that COVID has removed a lot of our established timelines and maybe our longer term goals, like maybe we don't have a recital coming up, we don't have that Mahler concert that was going to finally make us learn that solo, whatever it might be. Now we kind of had to come up with our own goals, and that can be we can explore things we never would have gotten to explore. And a great metaphor for this is kind of like a road trip. If I have to know where I'm going to get where I'm going. So if I wanted to go visit Buddy, I would have to corner him and make him give me his address. I wouldn't just head west and see where I ended up. I mean, that's great if you're trying to find gold, but not so great if I'm trying to get to a specific apartment in Arizona. And back to music, it's like, think about it this way. Two careers that involve a trombone. What if I want to be in the New York Phil? That's kind of like the standard. I want to be in an orchestra, I want to be in the New York Phil, versus wanting to be a freelancer with a large studio. Both fulfilling, both great careers, but they're going to look a lot different. If I'm looking to be in the New York Phil, my year goal is going to look a lot, or maybe my daily goals might look similar, but it's my year goals and everything are going to look a lot different. My big goals for a long time were kind of to get the degrees and take auditions, and suddenly things change and your goals change and you adapt. But I think by keeping my kind of career goals of wanting to be in an established ensemble, that kind of keeps me on track, even though we have all this crazy stuff going on. If I didn't have a career goal, it'd be a lot tougher to kind of adjust my long and short-term goals. So like I said, I don't want to go too much into goal setting, but I do think it's important when we're talking about practicing, because we have to know what to practice, and goal setting's a big part of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the idea with practicing and everything that you're talking about is the idea of how vague and expansive it is. So any musician who's watching this, or even anybody who's not a musician but knows musicians, will know, well, if you want to get better, like, you should practice. And then the idea of like practicing becomes super vague, and then the idea of I'm practicing to be successful or to have a career in music, which is also very vague, in a time that's very vague, because we don't have rehearsals, we don't have necessarily like auditions that are still happening, we don't have recitals to do and things like that. And although this is where people are starting to get really creative, this is also a time where we're dealing with a lot of unknowns and unknown timelines and lack of specifics. So when thinking about, like, I want to have this career in mind, okay, well, that means A, B, C, D, and E. And then next week we'll do F, G, and so on and so on.
Yeah, even try just starting singing the alphabet on G. It's going to be tough. I couldn't do it.
That's why I said two letters.
I can barely play a G. But yeah, that's exactly right. It's just like practicing is with time. It's suddenly, I can practice anything. What'll I do first? It's and then it becomes like, okay, I'll practice alto trombone, bass trombone, jazz. I should probably work on piano. It's like all of a sudden we're paralyzed by options, and that's where some of our short-term goals end. It's like, maybe one of my goals is to be more marketable. So maybe one of my short-term goals is I get my small bore out every once in a while and figure out how to move the slide on it. But this actually brings me really great into the next thing I was going to talk about, is what is practicing. I mean, that's what we're talking about. What is practicing? We just said it can be anything. It can be vague. It's this vague topic. What is it? And when I kind of wrote this out, my first thought was that Patrick Star meme, is mayonnaise an instrument? And it's what is practicing? I mean, am I practicing right now? I'm holding it. This is how I would sit. Most of the time I'm playing in an orchestra, it looks like this. I mean, am I practicing? Are you practicing by listening to me? I mean, it's we can get really creative with what practicing is, because at the end of the day, it's skill acquisition. It's learning. I think if you get through a music degree and you haven't become a better learner, then you've kind of missed the point. And it doesn't have to be on your instrument. I think it's easiest on your instrument because you're essentially with a master teacher for an hour a week, which is a lot better than most students have in college. So I think we have a really great opportunity to become master learners. But practicing is essentially just learning, um, and to kind of get into that, we have to know how our brain works. And shocker, it is super lazy. Some people would think of it as efficient, as I like to think of myself as efficient. Uh, Actually, I can't in good faith say that. But it's our brain is super efficient. As soon as it recognizes a task, it tries to automate it and save brain function for something else. We see that all the time. How it feels like it's shorter coming back from somewhere than going somewhere. Because going somewhere, our brain's like, "What's this? What's this?" And coming back, it's a lot less engaged. And we see this in habits. Anytime we repeat an action, our brain is compartmentalizing and making a track for it. And so what we can do is trick our brain into engagement. We understand how our brain works, and then we just trick it. That's And one of the ways is random practice. That's one of the first things we're going to talk about. This is straight from a Bulletproof Musician article. I do it a lot when I'm preparing for auditions. And random practice is you take the idea that in the first few minutes of learning something, our brain is significantly more engaged than if we do it again. Think about how easy it is to kind of get distracted in a 25-minute practice session. So rather than do that 25-minute practice session in a row, share it with another instrument. I like to switch this up with my lyrical and technical etudes, where I'll do each for 5 minutes, and basically our brain sees a new task every 5 minutes. I mean, in auditions, it's great. I like to pair Wagner with Saison. I'm sure, Buddy, you can think of a bunch of examples of we just take 3 things we're working on and rotate between them, and they can actually complement each other. Let's say rather you're working on Ride, Saison, and then you're also working on B major Arbanz. There's a ton of stuff. This one, there's the article. I think it's about randomized practices is really great.
So when you're talking about this idea of the brain being familiar with something, it's being either like what it sees or what it's doing, what it's having you do. Maybe something now or later that you can really talk into is, especially when people think about practice, the 2 things that I think about are a warm-up and a routine, which are often the same things that you're doing. That is kind of what a routine is initially assumed to be, is like the same sort of function, same exercises and things, day to day or every single time that you're practicing, or every day. So could you maybe expand upon how because I know you're really big into, warm-ups and routines. You're doing warm-ups throughout all of the Viva broadcasts and everything, as well as having like a really strong fundamental routine. And it's, attributed to your success on the instrument. But if you've done it where your brain has been tired and not engaged, then that's almost seen as like diminishing returns. So maybe you could talk about how you're still applying both those things, a warm-up and a routine, but still getting much, much better at the instrument.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I actually have that issue a lot with the routines I do, because I tend to do them for a long time. For better or worse, I've probably done like rotated between 3 or 4 routines in the last 4 years, and as Buddy knows, most of them have been the same routine. The Davis combined one is one of my favorite routines, and it's really easy to just kind of go through the motions. And what I try to do is just focus on something new every time, and there's also just do variations on them. It doesn't have to be I think you should try to do exactly what the routine says, because if you're going to trust the person that compiled the routine with your time, because again, time is our most valuable resource. So if if we're trusting this person who put their time into a warm-up or a routine, and then we're using our time to play it, we should give it the benefit of the doubt to know what they're talking about. But at some point, do some variations on it. With the Davis routine, I look at those tracks as a blank canvas. I'll do a bunch of stuff on them. I'll try different things every day, and not even just doing different exercises every day. It's doing goals, changing your goals every day. I kind of talked about it yesterday in the warm up. Is I try to have different. I'm trying to think. My brain is no longer thinks this is no longer new.
It's like, I'm doing an interview.
Yeah, it's so I'll try to think of maybe soft attacks for a whole warm up. I'll try to play everything as soft as I can, or loud, or it's just find different ways to be engaged with it, because doing the same thing over and over again, it's you are what you practice, and if for an hour you practice playing fundamentals unmusically, that's what you're going to end up as. I remember we had a friend that we were out teaching at a camp, the two of us, who was he would just always make noises, and I think you said to him, if you are 90% of what you practice, and 90% of your practicing is just goofing off, what is I think you remember what I'm talking about. He might even be watching. Shout out.
Yeah.
And so you're not doing yourself any favors by practicing badly. We should always be practicing musically. We should always, there's never a time when two notes can't be a melody, or even one note can't be a melody. It's not all right, I've done my fundamentals, it's time to be a musician now. But at the same time, I was thinking about this during this time. Sometimes it's just about getting the horn on your face. And if you're like, and I think I wanted to kind of talk about this at the end, but one thing I kind of get made fun of for is every once in a while, if I'm really just need to practice, but I'm not really feeling that motivated, I'll just turn on a movie and practice along with the movie, because it's better than not practicing. It's not better than practicing without a movie, for sure. But it's better than not getting the horn out that day. And on times like this, where you're just trying to get the horn on your face every day, it's the baby steps. And Brian Heck talked about when he was starting, Brian Heck, who's in the Atlanta Symphony, he thought he sounded so bad he would practice with music on, or something like that, so he couldn't hear himself. And so there's got to be some kind of proof in that pudding, I guess.
Yeah.
And
something before I forget, because we were talking about routines and everything, about how you're trying to add variation to it, you're trying to add variety to it. So a routine, I think, sometimes is just seen as these same exercises. It's like, but what are the exercises actually designed to do? It's to work on this aspect of playing, or this aspect of musicality, and things like that. So rather than just doing the exact same exercises, then it becomes doing and following a similar approach to playing, or a particular skill set that you're trying to do. If you're trying, like, for all of my students know this very well, but I love scales. And the reason I love scales is because you can add scales to any aspect of playing. You can be doing it on breath attacks, soft attacks, different articulations, different registers, connecting between registers, and then you have arpeggios inside of those scales. And if you're doing it, and if you're just doing it in all of your major keys, it's like, well, why don't you do it in all of your minor keys? Or why don't you do it in whole tone, or do it in diminished and things? So you're still working the same skill set and the same approach to playing, but you're adding that different level of engagement and activity for your brain to be a part of.
Yeah, and you can go even further. I mean, what would the scale sound like if it were in a Mahler symphony, or if it was in a Dizzy Gillespie solo, or you go on and on. It's suddenly we're musicians. Wow, look at that. We're playing music. We're over here, we're playing music, everything's great. It's always, there's so many ways to take something as simple as a scale. Just like and you look at cooking, you just take like a piece of bread, like a simple piece of bread, and you can elevate it with pancetta, do all this great stuff. I guess I'm hungry. Is it about lunchtime? But it's it's all about taking things that are simple that we can already do and using those to learn new things. That's really, I think that's the basis of practicing, is
Hmm.
finding ways to teach ourselves using skills we already have.
A big person that did this all the time was Sam Palafian at University of Miami. He did it with breathing gym, and he did it with the brass gym, because he would always be changing keys, or we would be doing a wind pattern to like the Star Spangled Banner or something, and he would say like, okay, now down an octave, and then you would start to use the air, just like at the drop of the hat, or you change it, or it's like, okay, well now let's do Brahms lullaby, like a march, and then so like having these different levels of brain activity, but also just like constantly stretching and refining your skills as a musician. So being able to do that, but always doing, but did it in his warm ups. It wasn't just about his practice session. And now, actually, since I just said it, I want to talk about and get your advice, Kenneth, on the practice session itself. So one of the things that I try to make sure that I'm doing, and I try to get my students to do, is that you're like, it's great if you're like, I am going to practice right now, or here's the time I'm going to practice. And then you sit down in the chair, you get your stand, you get your horn out, and then you're like, okay, now what? But actually having an idea before your practice session, because if we practice when we feel like it, we're going to practice a lot less. And if we only practice the things we feel like doing at that time, we're not going to get to like the large, variety and portion of things that we need to be addressing. It's like, well, I really need to work on my low register. It's like, I just don't feel like it right now, but I'll probably feel like it tomorrow. So I'll just practice my low register tomorrow or something like that. So how do you go about planning for your practice sessions?
Uh, yeah, that's another great question, Mr. Deshler.
Real quick, sorry, if anybody else has questions for Dr. Kenneth Johnson, just go ahead and comment them below in the Facebook.
Yep, I'm not looking, but my assistant's checking dutifully. That's a really great. I mean, that goes all back down to the to our goal setting. We have our career goals, and don't feel bad if you don't have a career goal. It's I remember someone saying it's like, oh, I love it when they want to play in this particular orchestra or something like that, and it's like that's really great, but I made the New York Phil example, but it's don't feel like you have to know what you want to do from a really young age. I mean, you're allowed to explore. Don't feel like you're a failure if you're thinking about this as a high school and you're like, oh, I just like playing my instrument. That's enough. Go from there. But to get back to the actual question, is our long goals channel our short goals, and so I know that if I want to do the things I want to do at this point in my career, I know what some of my limitations are. Um, and I'll be honest, a lot of it is pulse and time. I have trouble sometimes. I grew up tapping my foot, and so I kind of do things by feel. And if I can't always feel them, I have trouble with it. And so I know that that's what I have to work on. I don't really love working on that, but it's something we have to do. Playing carefully with the metronome isn't always that much fun, but it's what I have to do what I want to do. And there's also this idea, and this is if you have ever studied with Professor Ellison, this is not going to sound new. It's the path to success is well worn, right? There's information everywhere. So we know what a lot of these great players did to become great players. We know that they played a routine. They probably played a technical etude and probably played a lyrical etude, and then they probably played solos. I mean, and if we want to sound like someone, we kind of know how to get there. And so structuring yourself, just like if you want to be a great runner, you should probably check out what Usain Bolt does. If you want to be a great golfer, probably like, oh, maybe I should practice golf in the garage with my dad from the time I was 5. I was Tiger Woods. But it's look to your, I don't want to say heroes, but look to people that you want to have similar careers to and see what they did, because your path might look a little bit similar to them. And if it doesn't, some part of it will. And if it's not in your field, look at other disciplines. I feel like I'm notorious with my friends, as I love I love martial arts, and I love learning from martial artists because it's such an individual thing, and the way they talk about learning and training is very similar to the way I think about it, where it's just kind of you go in and you're just methodical and you go from step to step, and that's kind of how I like to think about it. But learn the point is learn from different people. Learn we're all just, like I said before, we're all just learning, so learn from other learners. It's the instrument is not that difficult. It's just the act of playing it. So it's we can take, and what I mean by that is things that work for other disciplines work on our instruments. It's kind of about doing. And I guess that kind of answers the question about the specific shorter practice sessions on the daily. But I was just as I was preparing for this, I was just kind of reading through some of my old notes, and one of them was from, I'm trying to find it because it was perfect for this. It was from the Bulletproof musician, and basically, I'll just what is it? I'll just paraphrase it. Thank you. Thank you, buddy. it was basically there. You must conceive, you must have a concept, and then the mechanics. So you have to start off just knowing what you want, whatever you're going to practice. Once you've decided what you're going to practice, know what you want it to sound like, and then learn the mechanics of it. I always make the metaphor that you don't want to play darts blindfolded. So if you are playing darts and you don't know where the target is, I'm not going to play darts with you or even be in the same room as you, frankly. And so we want to know what we want to do, and it seems that's kind of like a funny statement, but we have to have an idea, just like I talked about how I need to know where Buddy lives to go visit him, although I can always,
and you'll never know
in my heart. Well, it's on the crayon package you sent me, remember that?
Oh yeah. So we actually do have one question from our friend Dr. Derek Ganong. And he says, on the topic of becoming a better learner, can you talk about ways to encourage this in the private studio as a teacher, and also extrinsic perspectives that students tend to have?
I feel like I'm on a search, as Derek's practicing his search committee. So talking about, going back to that, that's my whole teaching philosophy, is I just want students to become better learners. And if they apply that on the trombone, that's great. If not, great. Use it in something else. The way we learn on the trombone is the same way I learn if I'm working at a bank. You identify the problem, you develop strategies, and you solve them. And I think as a teacher, how I do that with students is I try to give them tools without maybe giving them, I don't know how to say this. I try to give them all the answers to how to do something, but I let them decide how they're going to do it. I try to give them the full dollar's worth of information, but they get to spend it. So I'll often ask them to come up with multiple ways of practicing it. I'll have them playing in different styles. It's really, if a student can problem solve and think critically and think creatively, then I think they're becoming better learners. And that's the main thing, is I just try to leave stuff up to the students. I think a lot of play that I had played differently, and I think that was because I tried to get them. I didn't have them all listen to the same people. One of the first things I always do with my studio is I have them listen to this old song for Japan. I guess now it's old. It came out when we were in high school. The song for Japan. It has about 30 of the world's best trombonists on it. It's like, okay, watch that and pick one. And it's interesting the people that they would pick and how that would kind of affect them. I had one student who's a tenor trombone player pick Ben Van Dyke, who's one of the world's best bass and contrabass trombonists, and suddenly he had this like really fat low range. And it's like, okay, I wonder, like, that it's clear where that came from. And that was something he kind of created on his own. And I guess the main question is just when I'm teaching, I try to let them learn as much as I'm teaching them, if that makes sense. I try to make them uh, responsible for their own education. I think another one of my favorite things is you have more access to more technology in your pocket than the astronauts did on the moon in the 60s, right? I mean, we're basically walking around with supercomputers. Um, if there's a problem out there, there's probably a solution that you can figure out or at least kind of get started on and come up with on your own.
Yeah.
And I really encourage my students to do that.
Well, you
And
said two things. You said two things that really made me think about something where when you're talking about providing a lot of information, but still getting the student to take the initiative to do that extra step. Like, this is now your information, do with it what you will. And it makes me think of the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's talking about leadership and like being a boss. And it's like, like some bosses think they're good if they can make their employees work. But the really great leaders are the ones that can make their employees want to work.
mm-hmm.
So like being a teacher and, going in and practicing it's not like I'm just going to practice, but like actually wanting to practice. And then as far as like, one thing I've noticed about your teaching, just from the stories that you've told me, which are always entertaining, is that you find the ways to like have students do something that's like 2% effort that makes a big difference. So like, and regarding like the supercomputers that are in our pockets, students will come in to your lessons and they'll say, you'll ask them like, what does this Italian like word mean, or this Italian phrase? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, do you have your phone? It's like, yeah. It's like, Google it. And then they Google it. And then you would time them and be like, that took you 14 seconds. It took you 14 seconds to now know what style to play this piece in. And like now you have like that much more information with 2% effort to do it.
Yeah. Well, because I always say with those things, it's what if you don't know what andante means? What if andante means play like a pirate? You know what I mean? You have no idea. It's you're playing it like it's a walking pace, but it's really play like a pirate. And it's like you're totally missing it. You don't get it at all. And so if it's all about doing just the extra work and letting that inform you, letting that inform your creative juices, because it's it's really easy to not be creative, but it's also, I think, really easy to be inspired if you take the time to do it. And I guess was there any more to Derek's question?
Yeah, I think just the first part, kind of recapping, becoming a better learner, talking about ways to encourage this in a private studio. So it's like, how in your studio are you trying to get people to not just practice particular things, but to become better learners? And it sounds like it's you sort of putting the information out there, kind of giving a small assignment about it. Because you just said, watch this video, pick a person, and then you let the obsession grow. And I loved that in high school, and like I still do, but I did it all the time in high school, and we all did this, is that we just fall into this like rabbit hole of YouTube videos, because we'll like find this thing, and it could be something as stupid. It's like, like trumpet plays quadruple high C, and like we're like, oh, I want to definitely watch that. But then it's like, well, if you liked that, you might like these other videos. Or it's like, oh, here's the same player now playing in this. So like I'll post videos that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this video. And it's like, oh, I watched this video like 13 years ago. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like it's been forever since I've seen it. So it's about sparking this curiosity in our students to like, not just, do an assignment, but like be engaged and excited about the assignment and like the extension of the assignment. Cause it's like, pick this player, watch this video, pick a player. That the assignment wasn't watch this video, pick a player, and then watch 10 more videos of this player, but it might be a result of your assignment.
And it often was. It was the final step was they had to learn something about them, and usually it would take them to be like, and then I watched his videos for an hour, and then I think one student found a player that wasn't even in the video because they'd kind of gone down that rabbit hole. But I guess the main thing I do is I try to keep access. I try to put students in control of their own future. I think there's a lot of times students have a syllabus, and maybe you get to pick what essay you write once or twice a year, but you don't really get that much say in what you're learning. And I try to get students aware. There's certain schools of repertoire I think everyone should play. On the trombone, I think everyone by the time they're an undergrad should have played transcription, Baroque transcriptions. I think we should all be playing have played a prior solo or similar 20th century Americana band solos. And everyone should be playing music from the French conservatory repertoire, and everyone should also be playing music from the avant-garde tradition, because those are kind of our big schools of trombone repertoire, is these transcriptions. The French conservatory repertoire, that makes up a huge portion. And then, John Cage wrote a piece for us. It was Bernstein wrote an unaccompanied piece, and then it was John Cage wrote a piece, and suddenly Berio wrote a piece, and then you see influence of these two pieces in a ton of avant-garde repertoire, and suddenly we're an avant-garde instrument. Look at that, we have repertoire for the first time. And so we should be playing all that, and within those repertoire, I kind of put those guidelines out that I want them to do all this stuff, and then of course, if they're playing alto trombone, to play some of the alto trombone repertoire. Once they're in that, just to have them learn about that style, learn about the French conservatory style, try to play in a classic French style, learn about why that's different than an American style, and just get people inspired about learning, so they kind of do it on their own.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about, sorry, keep going.
I think we all find with those students, those are easiest to teach, because they've done half the work for us, and the students, and it after a lesson when they haven't done it, because you feel like you feel half empty, because you basically had to do a week's worth of learning for the student in that half hour to an hour, and to try to make up for it, it's just not gonna. An hour of your time doesn't equal a week of wasted potential. And so it's just trying to get students excited about what they're doing, and learning, and that's all we can do, is get them excited and give them guidance, and make them and hope that they end up better than us through the process.
Something that I do with my university students is, because you talk about the idea of like a syllabus and a curriculum, and like even in something as free as like the arts, like an artistic degree in music and things like that, is a curriculum is just like an attempt of providing a well-rounded education to provide, stability of knowledge and experience and skill to then survive in the musical world. But rather than have just the experiences and the classes and some knowledge and whatever they remember, is I actually have all of my students every semester have to do a semester project. And the project is something that they create on their own. It's the idea that they come up with. And it can be anything from, I made my own warm-up packet, or like I did a masterclass at high school, or I soloed at this event or at this school. So then every semester, they have not just like the accreditation of doing something like that and the reputation of doing something like that, but also like tangible physical things that are added to their musical profile and their portfolio, that they can then go out into the real world with. So it's like leaving that creativity up to them, but all because you kind of like planted this seed of like, do this and then have it turn into that. Because then, like, I had students that put together like audition prep packets for people who wanted to do drum corps. So like how to get in shape, as well as like how to, prepare for that summer prior to like the camps and auditioning for the camps. People that put together like playing in a jazz style if you're a classical musician. And then people that made like warm up and technique packets to use for private studio instruction. So like making their own exercise, and like in a lot of other different things too. So when we're talking about teaching and we're talking about, practicing too, it's giving a little bit more purpose to it than just this assignment. Like it has a greater goal in mind, and have it feed into something else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And anytime you have people engaged in what they're doing, they're gonna get more out of it. And I was also thinking, do find something you're bad at and learn how to do that. See, I found when I was a music ed student, I had to retake a few instruments, and one of them was French horn. And learning that, I remember part of it, I was a better brass player, but I learned French horn in like 2 days. I mean, because I had gotten so much better at learning. But it doesn't have to be another musical instrument. Find a hobby. When I'm not in school and when it's not, um, thanks Dakota. It was when I'm not in school and when there's not a pandemic going out, I love to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at it, and I lose a lot. But I learn a lot about myself and how I adapt to situations, how I learn new things, strategies for learning you just learn a lot when you're bad at something, and you look at it from the perspective of someone that's good at something else. You're going to learn a lot. I think especially now, get a hobby and get good at it. See and you're going to learn from that, because then suddenly you have access to all the masters in this other discipline. Like we're talking about golf, you want to be suddenly you have access to Tiger Woods and his thoughts, or if you're doing martial arts, there's everything Bruce Lee said was genius, or everything that George St. Pierre, Firas Zahabi, Greg Jackson. So these are some of my favorites. Everything they say is like a gold mine and is completely applicable to everything.
Yeah, we have like an endless well of musicians that we can look to as far as how they've like perfected their craft and how they polish things, how they become more musical, and also the path that they've kind of taken, certain opportunities they've had. But then we have a series of endless wells of people that have just perfected their craft and their art. Chefs, martial arts, sports,
carpentry, anything, plumbing, everything. Yeah,
everything. Because this is about exploring a particular world and refining and learning, constantly learning. So then this episode of the Biva broadcast is about practice methods, but I think it's really about practicing means learning. It's not like how you practice, but it's how you learn. How do you want to learn? What you should learn? How you should go about learning? And then the benefits of learning too.
And anybody interested in that should check out Zen and archery. There's Zen in a bunch. I think another popular one is Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance. But they talk a lot about it. I think the premise is this English philosopher went to I want to say Japan, and found that there were still a lot of really serious archers, even though archery hadn't been seen on a battlefield in a while, and it became all about getting good at archery. That was the real thing, was getting good at archery and then applying that elsewhere. And it was Zen and Archery. It's a really, really great book. Not that long, but a good read. And it's one of those books, we have so much information out there. I bet you can buy it on Amazon Prime for $2 right now. I bet you can find some old, I think that mine was this old paperback. It's about this big, probably like a 30-year-old edition. I think it was maybe like $3 or $4. Or support your local bookstores. Do that instead. Pay a little bit more, support a local bookstore.
Nice. Well, you were talking about also like practice things you're bad at, and that actually makes me
trombone.
Trombone. It makes me think about that podcast episode on It's Not Spit, It's Condensation, where they interviewed Barbara Butler, who's a part of Charlie Geyer, Barbara Butler, that tag team. And where they were at Eastman and then Northwestern and now Rice, and just like a slew of successful students. And what she always has her students do is create a list from 1 to 20. The first 5 are things that you're good at. And then 6 through 20 is all the things that you're bad at. And I did that too, and I've had students do that, and I actually do it from 1 to 25, so I have 5 more things that I'm bad at. But and then I type it up, print it out, post it where I practice. So that way when I am practicing, I just like look over and like, am I actually addressing the things that I'm bad at? And it's like, nope, I'm doing the things 1 through 5 that I'm good at, which is probably not how I should be spending my time.
Yeah, and then you harp on, and then that points directly to keeping track of what we're practicing and how we're practicing and our success on it. Our brains are great, but our memories aren't always as great as to what exactly we worked on. And then you're having this issue, and then you realize you had the same issue a week ago. It's like, okay, I need to change how I'm doing this. I remember with some of these excerpts that make the rotation, I remember thinking, okay, I remember practicing it this way last time, and it didn't go well, so I should probably do it differently. And that was something easy. It was an excerpt. It was a big deal. So I remember, but I don't remember. You don't remember all the little things. So just keeping track of the things. A practice journal is super valuable. You can do a Google Doc. I do Google Docs with my students to keep track of things. I just have an open document that they have access to. But yeah, it's just I think the more strategic you are, just like in anything, the better you're going to be. If you just kind of go in blind every day, you might stumble into some success, but you're going to come out blind. And it's important distinction, because for the whole first part of our career, we get better just by showing up, right? It's like, okay, I'm in 8th grade, so I'm better than I was in 7th grade. And all that is just, kind of muscle development. You're learning. And I like to think about it as we're going up this staircase where the stairs get smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's like your first day is this giant leap. It's like, I didn't play trombone. Now I play trombone. I'm literally an infinite percentage better than I was yesterday.
Right.
And then the next, okay, someone told me that you could buzz a mouthpiece, and my name isn't Andrew. So just kidding.
It's only funny to us.
Yeah, it's funny. If you know Andrew. And Andrew sounds better without buzzing than I ever will with buzzing. So maybe he's the right. But when I remember I learned how to buzz, and suddenly I was way better again. You know what I mean? It's like you find these things, and then slowly it's like, okay, I need to fix this, and to do that I need to fix this, and this, and this. And it's it's just a lot to keep track of in your head. And if you write it down, you're a lot better off.
Right. But this goes back to like the point that we said earlier, that strategy is good. Having a strategic nature to your practice is beneficial, but it's really only going to be beneficial if it's for a particular purpose. Either like big picture career goal, sure, but even if you don't have that, like these smaller attainable goals, these benchmarks, to do like to the next level, to get to the next level. It's not about necessarily always getting to the end, but you're trying to get to what's next. And then when you're there, you get to what's next. And then from there to what's next. And then eventually you might be there. But yeah, all this strategy is good, and you're meticulous about it, and you're refining like very small things. But if you don't know why, then you're just spending a lot of time, a lot of brain power, and getting a lot of emotions out there, maybe frustration, things like that. So always having like a direction and purpose for all of this strategy.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say sometimes the direction and purpose can just be to do something fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're getting very serious, but it's like I said, sometimes just put on a movie and play through the Bordoni. It's better than not. It's like, if that's fun to you, play something fun every day. The whole reason we do this is because it's fun. It's like I said, playing, I like to think of the instrument as being easy. It's just vibrating air in a pipe. I always say that if I were to leave my trombone in a field, at some point the wind would hit it in a way that some kind of sound came out of it. It's just a natural phenomenon, and we have complete control over it to an extent. And meaning, like, if I buzz my lips at a certain pitch, that pitch will come out, right? And so remember that it's easy and it's fun, and the things we do are challenging, and the goals we undertake are challenging, but the thing that we do is supposed to be fun. And at a time like this where everything is challenging, just remember it's fun. A guy I used to play with at Busch Gardens was a really interesting guy. We called him Commander Ted. He was like a submariner, but he would bring his euphonium into the sub on with like a practice mute, and all he did was do play-alongs. That's all he did, because that was fun. Why shouldn't it be? Why, like, he was retired. Why shouldn't he have fun playing his instrument? So that's what he did. And find something that makes you excited about trombone every day, because that's going to get you started. Or sorry, I say trombone because that's what I play. But
I was like, yeah, I'm
play your
not.
instrument
Good
every
luck
day.
getting me excited about trombone every day. No.
Me
Um,
putting it away is the only thing that gets you excited about it.
yeah, well, because I'm glad that you kind of, got away from a very serious vibe and having practicing being like only being a serious thing. And although you've attributed like the very early stages of music to being like just showing up,
Yeah.
and that makes you better. However, I think even today, like just showing up
Yeah.
is also helping us get better because it keeps us in the game longer. Like, yes, we all
Hmm.
know about how difficult and challenging it can be to have a career in music, um, and so we want to make the best use of our time. We want to have effective practice and productive practice, but at the same time, like if we're just still playing the game, because we all know people that have left music, and not for like good or bad reasons. It's just not what they want to be doing. And like very talented, very successful in our eyes at those moments, but how we're staying in the game and how we keep us staying in the game. And if that's by going to happen through burning out because you're very serious about all of your practice sessions, but I think leaving some part of your practice session or a day of your practice session to be about creativity, to be about having fun, different collaborations, different projects, and things like that. I think that's what really keeps us playing, and also keeps us getting better.
Yeah. David Taylor talks about the really great bass trombonist. How he's worked with everybody. I think he tells stories about he turned down a Michael Jackson recording session because he had a better gig or something crazy like that. Um, he talked about doing the day gig to do what you want to do sometimes, and he was like, I was lucky. For me, it's the recording sessions for my day gig, so I could play chamber music. But yeah, it's finding stuff that we really enjoy. I started a trio with Taylor's my girlfriend, a violinist, and one of our friends who's a pianist, and that was a ton of fun. I had a lot of fun with that. I contacted a lot of composers because shocker, there's not a lot of music for trombone and violin out there. Um, but there's soon going to be more. And we have a lot of really great pieces. Again, Chris Neener arranged just a really nice piece, and it became really, really fulfilling. We built a website, Instagram, we need to post on more, but it's there. Um, and it's finding, it's not always actually playing it. You talked about this a lot with your entrepreneurial student. It's we kind of turned into like a not getting burned out talk a little bit, but it's finding things to keep you motivated. And it doesn't have to be your instrument. It doesn't have to be your scales or your Charlier etude or your Arbins, daily Arbin. Sometimes it's something else with music that's furthering your music career. Um, I guess I don't know how long I wanted to go. I wanted to talk about one other practice thing. And this I kind of talked about this a long time ago when we were doing those uh, articles, our newsletters. And this is one of I'm kind of expanding one of the things I talked about with this talk. Um, and it goes back to, sorry, my aunt just messaged me. Said, hey, sugar, what's your address?
Not that you're doing anything right
Not
now.
that I'm doing anything, yeah. Um, it's funny. Yeah, it's because I had Facebook open so we could start this link. Anyway, uh, and it goes back to just taking things that are difficult and making it simple. We talked about Sam Palafian in the breathing gym. That's what that is. That's taking something that can be a problem for people in our playing and completely removing the instrument and addressing the issue. We can do this with everything. We're most often we do it with tempo. It's a lot of times our practice plan starts and ends with playing things slower until we can play it faster. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. I think what is it? One of Bud Herseth's sayings was, "I practice slower than anybody," or something along those lines. It's like no one knows. So it was basically he practiced slow. He practices slow, and there's really not much practicing slow and recording. There's not much better than that, but there are other options. Um, I think one of the ways, one, it's super effective, but also, that's what our band directors did because that's one of the easiest ways to teach students or with thinking about classroom management, is to it's just to have people play slow rather than kind of do a more individualized plan. But pretty much, if we think about tempo as being an element of music, then we can also kind of do the same thing with tessitura, pitch, articulation, rhythm, style, meter. All of those things can be changed to engage the brain or to simplify. So we're practicing something. I think Bolero, a really common one, is to think of it in a different meter and to put the stress on the different meter. But we can do that with anything. Playing things in a different. If you're having trouble playing something in E major, put it in E flat. In B major, put it in B flat. One of my favorite terms is the people's key of B flat.
That's some sequence talk. That's some Will Baker sequence talk.
Hashtag get fluent. Yeah. I think he should take something hard, make it easy, and then make it hard again, right?
Well, it comes to the idea of like practicing and being successful when you practice, and being successful is built on like a lot of tiny successes rather than like, okay, I can play this concerto from memory. Like now I'm successful.
It starts
like the
off
small
with
achievements, the super small achievements.
Yeah, it starts off with I'm one thing I work on is I try to never play something when I'm sight reading or when I'm working something. Our brain doesn't know what good or bad sound is. That's why it's important for us to listen. So if you're playing with a bad sound, it's like, well, he's done that like 50 times in a row, so maybe that's what I think a B natural should sound like now, or whatever it is, or a high note should sound like. So if you're learning something, wrong or incorrectly, or even just without a lot of success, that's what you're going to remember. That's what's going to happen. Or even with tension. I found at one point I was having a lot of tension issues, and I found that if I even thought about it was a Biche etude, surprise, and if I even thought about it, my diaphragm tensed up a little bit. It's like, oh, this has nothing to do with trombone. This is all mental. Got it. And that's another word, mental practice. I talked before about what is practicing. Is this practicing? Mental practice is absolutely practicing. A lot of studies have said that. Your brain can't really tell the difference between a mental practice and physical practice. And I challenge you, think of something hard you're working on, play it through in your head, see if you chip a note. I often have students do that. And I was like, did you chip a note? And I think some of them lie, but
no, absolutely.
And it's like you chip a note and it's like, well, no wonder I can't play it. I can't even think it. Right. And so, if you're having these issues, simplify it. And so like I said, if I'm having trouble with something, I get it to a point where I'm successful. If that's with the horn, cool. If it's not with the horn, if I'm singing it, I'm buzzing it, I'm conducting it. Taylor and I just recorded this duo where it was a lot of polyrhythm. And as I said before, not exactly my strong suit. And so we just moved somewhere where I could walk to the grocery store, and I walked in 5/2, 6/2, 7/2, 8/2, and then going back and forth because that's what I needed to work on. It wasn't holding a trombone. It was at that point I was just guessing without doing those exercises. So that's one big thing is find success at an early stage. I think a lot of times we'll be like, okay, I did this, and this, and let's see how it goes. Take command of your progress from the very beginning. And it's once you've mastered that small thing, put it back in. We're not building a house, the house doesn't come in one piece for the most part. It comes a real quality house comes brick by brick, and that's how we're building these pieces. We want to be engaged, because otherwise, I mean, what's the point if you're not paying attention? It's just like, oh, I didn't really get better this week.
You'll build a sloppy house.
Yep, we have to divide and conquer. We have to be creative by finding different ways to isolate and master the musical elements in each phrase. Can you tell I just read that?
No, I couldn't.
You should watch my lecture recitals. We talk about learning. One thing I learned is that from doing these things I'm bad at, which is doing school projects and lecture recitals, is writing down what I'm going to say, giving myself a script. If I don't, there's a lot of ums, and then a lot of paraphrasing, and sometimes Buddy isn't there to tell me the word paraphrase when I can't think of it. So learning what you're bad at and getting better at it. And so this is the kind of I don't know if I need to do playing examples, but I wanted
we're getting close to out of time.
Well, we don't need to. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, because we can talk about practicing for a long time, because it's not just about practicing, as we've shown you over the last hour. It's about how we learn. It's about how we stay motivated. It's about how we approach music's role in our life, and how we find inspiration and intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation and all those kind of things. But Kenneth, Dr. Kenneth Johnson, do you have any other just last things you want to say about this episode?
My closing thoughts were just, have fun, be motivated. I talked about this, be motivated by other disciplines. We're just learning how to learn. The people that are the best at your instrument at one point were the best students. And going off on that, think about the best player you've ever heard in your life. At one point, you were better than they were. You are better now than they were at one point in their life. At one point, if you go back early enough to Joe Alessi's career, I'm better now than he was. That's not the case now, obviously, but we're all on the same path, right? It's find your path, and that doesn't mean you're stuck on that path, but be motivated by others, and be motivated by other successes, and because you can do anything anybody else is doing. And this time is crazy. My kind of mantra right now has been time is a weapon, right? And use the time. It's be efficient with the time, and because while it's perfectly okay, to have trouble getting things done, because our brain isn't really it's not developed, or it's not good at handling a global crisis. At some level, our brain is still kind of the reptile brain part that just kind of keeps the lights on. There's still parts of that in there that doesn't really understand what's happening, where we're living day to day in a time that's very much day to day. And so don't be ashamed if you're having trouble getting the horn out, but any success is a success. If you find that you watch Avatar: The Last Airbender and you play Arbans while you do that, that's better than not playing Arbans, right? That's better than just watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. So find tiny successes and be motivated and inspired by that success. If you're watching this, you're already doing that. Maybe not with this particular one, but it's just find ways to be happy with your instrument. And I know it's tough, because sometimes not everyone is lucky to have a room they can practice in. I know I have some students that are doing a lot of practice mute stuff, but that's better than nothing, right? Be inspired, be motivated, and just do your best, because that's enough. That's enough during at any time, but especially during this. Just do your best, and I guess the last thing is just find projects. That's what I'm doing, is just finding projects, finding things you want to do. Try not to be overwhelmed by the amount of projects you can do. Sometimes it's staggering. It's like you're trying to play long tones. You think about 5 different projects you want to do. But just do your best. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Do your best and be understanding.
And speaking of projects, this has been episode 4 of the Biva Broadcasts, which is our month-long educational offering to all of you, to our music community. So thank you, Dr. Kenneth Johnson, for joining us today to talk about practicing and motivating ourselves. If you have any other questions about this topic, feel free to reach out to Kenneth, as well as any of the Brass Institutes of Virginia. Kenneth, you may or may not be aware, but how we actually are signing off all of our episodes is with our best mouth trumpet from all people on the call. So a mouth trumpet could sound like, So could we please hear your best mouth trumpet or trombone?
Oh, I have the option to do a trombone. You're giving me the option.
Only you.
Well, that's so kind of you. I mean, wow. I get on here and I get the option to make a noise that's either a trombone or a trumpet.
Mhm.
So it's a mouth trumpet noise. Usually mouth trumpet noises I hear something along the lines of like, oh man, I should have just warmed up a little bit more.
Well, let's hear your interpretation of what a mouth trumpet would be.
How's that?
Stellar.
I like the tuba. That's my interpretation.
Cast your votes. So thanks for tuning into Viva Broadcasts. Later this week, episode 5, we have Dr. Derek Anong doing a DAW presentation. And then the following day, we have an interview with Joe Levinsky, a fantastic horn player, as well as a previous Fred Brass artist. And then on Friday, we are going to have our second Viva premiere, so a nice video that's going to be launched. So tune into the Brass Institutes of Virginia pages, Fredericksburg Brass Institute, and Tidewater Brass Institute for more information, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you again to Dr. Kenneth Johnson for joining us today on Viva Broadcast to discuss evaluating effective practice methods. If you would like your product or school to be featured on our broadcasts, please reach out to me, Dakota Corbliss, Director of Operations, at dakota@fredbrass.com, and we'll be sure to set it up. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.